Tonight we begin with a development that immigration officials had feared, anticipated, and quietly prepared for. A policy shift that unfolded not over months, but in a single week. A single week that has already denied entry to hundreds of travelers. A single week that has created confusion at major international airports. A single week that has immigration attorneys warning their clients to prepare differently than ever before. What border protection agencies implemented this month crossed a line that travelers had hoped would remain flexible. And when that line hardened, customs officers did not hesitate. They responded with precision, consistency, and zero tolerance. For 18 months now, there had been signals, not official announcements, not formal policy changes, just signals, that immigration enforcement was preparing something significantly stricter. Border agencies have been methodical, yes, but they have been deliberately methodical in their approach. Their changes have followed a certain pattern, a rhythm, almost a choreography. But what set off alarm bells in immigration law circles this January was that the pattern went silent. Immigration specialists who monitor policy shifts know the indicators. The leaked internal memos, the pilot programs at select airports, the training modules for customs officers, the sudden policy review meetings. All of that went quiet. And whenever enforcement agencies go quiet, it means something is about to get loud. Early January 2026, Customs and Border Protection detected what they described as unprecedented numbers of inadmissible cases, including question response patterns that had not been flagged in over 5 years. These are the kinds of screening protocols that immigration authorities only activate when they are signaling something very specific: heightened security concerns, policy enforcement escalation, or systemic compliance review. Legal observers didn't know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that border protection was changing its posture. And when federal agencies shift enforcement strategy without broad public explanation, even by seemingly small measures, the traveling public pays attention. The advisory issued by immigration authorities this month was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Immigration attorneys after consultation meetings described the new enforcement approach as uncompromising data-driven, and perhaps most importantly, algorithmically consistent with zero discretionary flexibility. But warnings only work if travelers take them seriously. Many did not. In fact, the denial rate today is among the highest we've seen in modern immigration enforcement. Here's what we know. Within 72 hours of the policy activation, customs officers flagged over 340 cases for secondary screening. These weren't the standard random checks. These were targeted interventions, questioning protocols that immigration only deploys when they are preparing to enforce admissibility standards to the letter of the law. Tonight, immigration sources confirm that Border Protection launched enhanced screening on 9 critical questions, including background inquiries that had recently been reclassified for what analysts believe was national security integration. Officers began intensive questioning before travelers could reach the standard customs checkpoint. They focused on question 1, purpose of visit. They focused on question 2, duration of stay. They focused on question 3, financial support documentation that were likely being cross-referenced with database verification systems. In other words, Border Protection targeted the foundational admissibility framework, the credibility markers that would validate whether entry is legitimate. This is what made immigration attorneys' warnings so urgent. The new questioning protocol wasn't just procedural, it was determinative. It represented the kind of enforcement that could result in immediate denial and multi-year entry bans if answered incorrectly. And customs officers, understanding that fully, responded with systematic rigor. Not arbitrarily, not subjectively, but algorithmically. They didn't accept vague responses. They didn't overlook inconsistencies. They verified question 4, employment status. They verified question 5, previous immigration history. And here's where the story becomes even more critical. Immigration policy experts now believe that the enhanced questioning protocol was designed to test the accuracy of traveler declarations after increased incidents of visa fraud. Border Protection wanted to see whether travelers would provide inconsistent information. But instead, the opposite happened. Customs officers didn't merely record discrepancies. They initiated denial proceedings that were so swift, so final, that even experienced travelers were caught off guard. You don't get immigration enforcement's attention easily, but in January 2026, hundreds did. Border security analysts speaking with legal associations under anonymity described the policy shift as calibration, a way to restore admissibility integrity. But the results proved that enforcement remains both technologically advanced and legally unforgiving. Their questioning protocols were not only comprehensive, they were cross-referenced so precisely that database inconsistencies triggered automatic secondary screening. That technological integration matters because it shows immigration has moved beyond manual verification. It shows that Border Protection is not operating on outdated systems. They are leveraging real-time data validation. As reports continued coming in throughout the month, we learned more about the scale of the enforcement expansion. Major international airports carried out simultaneous protocol updates, forcing travelers to answer all 9 questions with documentary evidence. Secondary screening facilities targeted discrepancies that had been flagged in the last 60 days of travel history. Immigration databases operating across multiple agencies reportedly integrated biometric and financial verification used by customs to cross-check stated purpose of visit. This wasn't just enhanced questioning. This wasn't just random screening. This was systematic admissibility enforcement. This was algorithmic consistency. And algorithmic consistency is the one thing casual travelers have struggled to prepare for since technology integration began. For every convenience that digital systems have created, Border Protection has countered with verification protocols that eliminate discretionary leniency. Remember, travelers thought verbal explanations would suffice. They thought customs officers would accept general answers. They thought supporting documentation was optional. But in January 2026, the exact opposite is happening. Question 6 about accommodation details requires verifiable reservations. Question 7 about return travel requires confirmed bookings. Question 8 about ties to home country requires employment letters, property documents, and family evidence. What makes this moment so significant and so concerning is that the enhanced enforcement happened at a time when immigration policy is under intense political scrutiny. Security hawks want stricter admissibility standards. Business groups want streamlined processing for legitimate travelers. Civil liberties advocates want consistent due process protections. Immigration reform coalitions want comprehensive policy overhaul. Border Protection is balancing these demands while managing record-high international travel volumes. And when agencies in that position make sudden enforcement changes, they're not doing it from bureaucratic preference. They're doing it from mandate. They're doing it from accountability pressure. Customs and Border Protection's advisory notice, now distributed through embassy websites and airline partnerships, was designed to signal that authorities are not willing to accept undocumented claims. Officials said plainly that travelers' verbal responses were inconsistent with documentary evidence and database records. That is diplomatic language for, we're verifying everything, and inconsistencies mean denial. You don't usually hear that tone from border agencies unless enforcement priorities have fundamentally shifted. Meanwhile, the CBP commissioner addressed international travel stakeholders in a detailed, unambiguous briefing this month. He said, "We have an obligation to ensure that every person entering this country has stated their purpose truthfully and can demonstrate their intent to comply with the terms of their admission." He said, "The 9-question protocol is not new law. It is consistent enforcement of existing admissibility requirements." And he said, "Travelers who cannot provide clear, consistent, and verifiable answers should reconsider their timing and preparation." These are not rhetorical flourishes. These are statements from an agency that understands just how high the stakes have become. Here's what makes the situation even more concerning. The enhanced questioning protocol wasn't isolated. Along with the 9 core questions, biometric verification systems also integrated facial recognition and fingerprint cross-referencing. Social media screening expanded to include declared employment verification. Financial review processes increase scrutiny targeting travelers claiming tourism without sufficient funds. All of this happened within the same 3-week period. When border protection moves multiple verification systems simultaneously, it means something larger is underway. Immigration analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that border protection is preparing for long-term enforcement standardization across all ports of entry. Another is that agencies are attempting to reduce visa overstay rates through front-end screening intensification. A third possibility, the one worrying travelers the most, is that immigration is attempting to create a deterrent effect through high-visibility denial cases. But this month, Border Protection made clear their intent. They didn't issue warnings without enforcement. They didn't grandfather previous entry patterns. They didn't provide discretionary exceptions. They enforced the 9-question protocol universally. What we're watching now is a test of traveler preparedness. Border Protection wants to see accurate, verifiable, consistent responses. Travelers need to demonstrate legitimate purpose with documentary proof. Immigration attorneys want to prevent wrongful denials through better client preparation. And policy advocates want to ensure enforcement doesn't become discriminatory profiling. Tonight, we've heard from immigration law firms who are now conducting intensive pre-travel consultations. They say, Question 9 about previous visa violations is catching travelers off guard. They say even minor inconsistencies are triggering denials. And they say Border Protection's decision to implement database cross-checking is likely part of a broader modernization strategy intended to eliminate fraud and ensure compliance. But travelers are not being given second chances. In fact, denials are being processed immediately. Their experiences this month, frustrating, costly, and reputation-damaging, sent a message to would-be visitors that preparation is now mandatory. And it sent a message to immigration advocates that enforcement has entered a new technological era. As February 2026 continues, we expect more details to emerge about what exactly Border Protection hopes to achieve long-term. But what we do know is that the 9-question protocol implementation was decisive. It eliminated ambiguity in admissibility standards. It raised the evidentiary bar for all travelers. And it demonstrated that Border Protection has the technological capacity to verify everything. What happens next will depend on what travelers do in the next weeks and months. If they prepare documentation thoroughly, this moment will be remembered as a wake-up call that improved compliance. If they continue arriving unprepared, Border Protection has already shown they are unwilling to compromise. They have shown they are ready to enforce. And tonight, for the first time in years, casual international travelers appear to be reconsidering their approach. Airport arrival areas are tense, too tense. And when experienced travelers are nervous, it means they are finally understanding the stakes. It means they are choosing their answers carefully. Because in January 2026, thousands learned something the hard way. Immigration enforcement is no longer discretionary. Border Protection has technological verification at every checkpoint. And the 9 questions are not conversation. They are legal testimony with immediate consequences. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The era of casual border crossing is finished. Documentation is now mandatory, and preparation is the only protection against denial. And we will be here, watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.